Are you planning a move to South Florida and you want a town that's more than just sunshine and palm trees? Well, I'm going to tell you about a laid back resort town that really delivers. Delray Beach. Delray has historic charm, walkability, outstanding beaches, excellent boutique shopping, top tier restaurants, and a variety of residential living options, all wrapped in an old school, small town beach vibe. Really, it's the perfect blend of luxury, culture, coastal living, and laid back charm. So stand by and I'm going to tell you all about it. So sometimes I think it's harder for me to talk about cities that I've been around and known for a long time than ones that I don't know as much about. So I'm pretty familiar with Delray. I've spent a lot of time. I worked there at one time, known it for 40 years probably. And so that's kind of got me like overthinking it. So I'm going to start just to give you, as I always do, the niche rating, and then I'll talk a little bit about Delray Beach. Okay, so here's the niche rating for Delray Beach, and it has an overall rating of A, which I would expect because it's an excellent community. It has great public schools in the eastern part of town and in the western part of town. And, I will say again that in Florida, we do have school choice. So even if you're in a community that you aren't so crazy about the schools, where there's a will, there's a way in terms of, having your kids go where you feel comfortable and a school that you favor. So anyway, so public schools get a B plus, nightlife gets an A, which is kind of a double-edged sword. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Diversity gets an A, but and also good for families, a B plus. And I think that the reason why you see the crime and safety as a C and the housing as a C plus is because it does have quite a lot of nightlife and people come from other areas to enjoy that aspect of Delray. So, that crime may be related to that. And then also housing is quite expensive, and I'm not sure how much rental mid-priced properties there are in Delray, but you really can find them. And when I show you this map, and here's the mix, 65% owned and 35% rented. And so when you look at the boundaries, again, I think sometimes, just like I shared with Northwood, that what niche uses is this municipal boundary, but that is only like half the story because there's all this out here west of the city boundaries that the people that live out here consider themselves living in Delray, even though they're actually in unincorporated Palm Beach County. So I just wanted to make that point. So the first thing I'm going to do is I actually created my own Google map with, you'll see over here, all the points of interest that I'm going to talk about. And before I dig into that, I'm going to just zoom out because I didn't show you, once again, kind of the context of Delray. So I did another video where I talked about Boca Raton versus West Palm Beach. And Boca is about equal distance between West Palm and Fort Lauderdale. If you're a traveler, West Palm, the Palm Beach airport, is super convenient and convenient to Delray as well. But it doesn't always have as many flights, especially when it comes to international flights. So normally if you're traveling, especially when it's off season and there's a lower number of flights scheduled, you might end up using Fort Lauderdale. So I think a lot of people that do travel a lot find this location of Delray more attractive than being up in the northern part of the county. So Delray, here it is right here, just north of Boca. And when I did another video and I talked about community living areas, I call this one area primarily Boca Delray because I think people really do move in between the two. I grew up here in Pompano, Lighthouse Point, and we spent a lot of time in Boca and Delray. And back then they both were more like resort towns. Now they've really come into their own. And I'm going to talk about that right now because Delray, I'm going to zoom in, and it's kind of the east against the west here in most of these towns. The towns were all established along the coastal areas. That is where the draw is in most cases, all the way up the coast, because you've got the downtown areas, the historic areas, the shops and restaurants, and more of a walkable sort of environment. Whereas this area out west, which I'll show you some of these developments, is also attractive because some people move here and they want to be in a golf community in a more suburban environment. which you can be out here. And this is the main drag, Atlantic. So, it goes all the way out west. At one time when all of this was just only developed, and this was not, this was all farmland, peppers, tomatoes. I had friends where Pompano was a big agricultural area, and a lot of the farmers moved up to Delray and Boynton, and we did have an ag reserve for a long time, but I think it's kind of slowly being diluted. So anyway, that's just kind of an overview. And next I'm going to talk about the heart of Delray, which is Atlantic Avenue. Okay, so first I'm going to talk about what makes Delray so attractive. It was an old resort town back in the day. And most of that meant that where the popular area is now was like considered out west. So this area here, and I'm going to show you some pictures as I talk about these different locations in Eastern Delray along Atlantic. But Atlantic is the main drag that runs through town. It runs from A1A at the ocean, and it runs all the way west to 95. I mean, I'm going to talk at the end of the video about the western communities. And as you can see, Atlantic runs all the way west. So people who live out west, consider themselves living in Delray, even though the municipal boundaries are in here. And the reason why they do is because of Atlantic Avenue, really. And so as you go along here, when you get in East, Delray has, I've got these markers here. So first of all, Delray, starting from the west, has one of the best tennis centers. And it's actually, they have a large 8,000 person stadium here, as well as there's a lot of the young tennis players got their start in this area. And that goes way back. So this tennis center is a real draw, and people can live in these areas, which I'm going to talk about later, like the historic areas up here or newer, low profile condos here. But the beautiful thing about Eastern Delray Beach that's different from some of the other towns is that it's had a lot of growth. It has tons of shopping and restaurants. It's got amazing nightlife at night if you like that. But if you don't like it, you can escape into these neighborhoods to the north and south and get away from it. Also, the city has kept the construction, the renovation, the new construction, really super low profile. So there's not much more than, I don't even think there's anything taller than 5 stories. I think most of it's like between 3 and 5 stories, which makes it really attractive. So I talked about the tennis center here, and there's an older, you're going to see these videos I have of something called the Sunday House. And that used to be like an old historic home that was a great place to go for lunch or brunch on the weekends. And the developers are, because this has become developed more to the west, they're redeveloping this area, but they're really maintaining the nature of it. So there's like a new building you'll see here that I have the pictures of on the corner with this new construction, and Sunday House Village here is getting changed. But then you'll see right here this, I have it here on my legend, but it's called Doc's Place. And it's the same hamburger joint where you'd go for a milkshake and a hamburger or a hot dog that was there 40 years ago, and they're preserving it. So from there you go, as you head down Atlantic, we have Pineapple Grove here is arts part of town. You have Old School Square here where they have museum and art exhibitions. And then all along Atlantic here, you have this old, I called it the old meets new, because you have like this, it's called the Office. That's where we used to go for a drink after work. He's at the Office. But then something more modern and current, which is a farm to table restaurant. And then as you go down, you get to the Green Owl, which was the joint for breakfast, and it's still there and operating, as well as down a ways toward the bridge. And you have the Blue Anchor, which is a British pub that's been there forever. But all in between here are new up and coming restaurants. I've got photos of them as I'm talking, and also really great boutique shopping. So you can go from Swinton, which is kind of the western boundary of the downtown area of Delray Beach, and you can go, you even extra cross over the railroad tracks here. The train does come through. It's the Brightline train, and it's a high speed rail, but everyone seems to really honor it. The arms come down and everybody waits, and then they move on. So great boutique shopping all along Atlantic, which really does make it a draw. It's very different from most cities this size with the level of shopping and restaurants that they have. And then you can just go over, you can see how narrow the intercoastal is here. And if you watched some of my other videos when I refer to the Intercoastal as Lake Worth, north of here, it's very wide because it was a natural lake. Down here, it's the result of Army Corps of Engineers that I think that it even exists. And so what's great about it is if you're walking down Atlantic, and you could be living anywhere here, and this is really the routine of a lot of people, is they just love living a few blocks from downtown, and then that morning walk can be for your coffee or your breakfast. The bridge is very low profile here when you go over the Intercoastal, and then this like 4 or 5 block stretch to the ocean where you might go for a beach walk is super civilized and has a number of hotels here, like the Seagate and then the Opal, which is right at the beach. And they're all like just 4 or 5 stories tall. Even here, going back a little bit, the Colony Hotel here, it's an old historic hotel that's along Atlantic, and it has a deep, shady front porch and shops all around it, galleries all in the area. And then the Colony actually has a cabana club that's down here. So if you stay at the Colony, you can take your walk down to the beach and go down to the private beach club that the Colony has. And that same thing is true for the Seagate, which is right around here. And you can just go to the beach and come down south. And right here is the Seagate Beach Club. So if you live in Delray, you can actually join the Seagate Beach Club. The Seagate Beach Club also has the hotel. It also has a marina over here along the Intercoastal, as well as the municipal marina to the north, the North Bridge across the Intercoastal to the beach. This is kind of the northern border of town. There's another marina here called Marina Delray, and you can actually even belong to a marina club where you rent your boat and you don't even have to have the responsibility of owning a boat. And then lastly, the lower boundaries down here, it's not really quite at Linton. Here's Linton Boulevard. But this is a more modern, this was developed later. So all this is historic up here. Well, Linton, if you live up here, you can come down and you've got Trader Joe's and Publix and all the shopping that you need here. And then you have all these canals, which isn't true up north here. So there's a lot of homes on canals here, and this is referred to as Tropic Isle. So a lot of water-oriented living. And all this here this is the beach area here. Here's Linton, the Colony Hotels Cabana Club is. And then you've got beautiful, large homes on the ocean here. And then large, not so large, but large homes and low-profile condos here. So you could belong at the Seagate Club and walk your way here. So there's just a lot going on. And that's what is the draw here, I think, in Atlantic, is the low-key nature and of the whole town in general, the way it's been built out, and its walkability and access to, really all the conveniences that you need to live a really comfortable life. And the only thing I'll say is, before I move on to talk about some of the residential options, is that during the season gets extremely busy. And that's the double edge of the sword, because a lot of people just, I'm not attracted to it, but the nightlife gets really a little crazy along Atlantic during the season, especially. So that's when you're living up here or you're living down here, you kind of might be avoiding it in the evenings because it does get a little hectic. So I'm just going to take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Diane Wimbrow, and I am a lifelong South Floridian and realtor here in Palm Beach County. And I just love talking to people who are thinking about moving to South Florida, but they just don't know where to start. And I love helping them figure out the right spot for them. So if this sounds like you, feel free to call me or text me at the number below, and we can set up a Zoom call or have a chat. And in the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe so that you'll know every time we have a new video. So let's get back to talking about Delray Beach. Okay. So we talked about Atlantic, we talked about the nightlife and all the wonderful amenities of Delray. And so I'm going to run some videos here and just show you, give you a feel for, I would say between like George Bush Boulevard here and Atlantic, and then out to Swinton are these videos that I'm showing you. And this would be considered the more historic parts of Delray for residential, but not exclusively. It's not quite as heavily historic as, say, if you watched my video of West Palm, where there are so many historic neighborhoods. But a lot of this residential living, say from George Bush, all in this area right here, is a mix of up here more historic homes. As you come along Swinton, you'll see these beautiful older homes, and then there's also some older homes here on George Bush, and all in this area is kind of historic homes. But as you come down south more toward Atlantic, in the Pineapple Grove area, you get a little bit more like renovated cottages and also newer construction townhomes and apartments, but they're all pretty low profile, as I said before, like no more than 4 or 5 stories tall. So it's densely populated, but it doesn't feel urban to me. And it's quite nice. And then of course, along the Intracoastal here, you have single family homes and some low profile condominiums. And then south of Atlantic is the same thing. They call it SoFa. And down here, you'll see there's new construction that has gone on where these condo buildings have been built. And then over here near what is considered US 1, but is really Fifth Avenue, I show some residential that is here in between Atlantic and Linton. So, and then when you get down to Linton, this is where it's kind of more modern, if you will, newer construction in the last 30 or 40 years. But this really is like the main drag here for shopping, and there's groceries and all your conventional type of conveniences. And then in this area here, you have a couple of different development, Harbor's Edge and Tropic Isle. And there's another one further south here called Pelican Harbor. And all of these, as you can see, these canals, these are really the only canals you're going to see in Delray, which there's quite a bit of it. You're now in Boca down here, but this canal divides Boca from Delray. But so you do have some good water options. The ocean access from the Intracoastal, which you can see is very narrow here. If you were see how as you get up further north, it turns into Lake Worth and it's very wide. So down here, you've got this narrow Intracoastal. You've got these higher end towns through here as you go north of Delray. And so your ocean access options are either the Boynton Beach Inlet up here north of Ocean Ridge. That's right here, but that's kind of an awkward inlet because it does have a bridge over it and it's more of a man-made inlet. So it can be a little treacherous, I think, to navigate. And then the next one down would be the Boca Inlet down here. And that's also kind of a difficult inlet. So I think that you're going to have more center consoles. You can also rental boats here at Marina Del Rey at George Bush Boulevard. So those are your options here living east. And then in the last section, I'm going to talk about the Western communities and how that works. All right. So I really focused on the eastern part of Delray, and the Western part actually deserves a whole separate video, which I probably will do at one point, but I did just I'm going to zoom in a little here and just show you this area in between these pin drops I have to the west versus the east. This is all developed with all different types of gated, ungated communities, low-rise condos, golf clubs. So it really could get its own episode. But I did want to point out, like, for instance, one of the big draws that people really enjoy is here, the Murakami Museum in Japanese Gardens. And it's kind of south of Linton, in between Linton and Yamato Road. And this is super popular. It's acres of beautiful gardens, and it's a really beautiful place to go and just enjoy the quiet and go for a walk. They have a beautiful Japanese museum. There was I think like a colony of Japanese people that lived here some time ago, and that's where the influence came from. I think there were a lot of, like I said, there was a lot of farming out here, and I'm pretty sure there were pineapple groves out in this area as well, and that was the farming that was going on here. And then just these developments out here off of Lyons Road, like Meisner Country Club and the Bridges and Seven Bridges, these are all just super luxury, beautiful developments. And that's like at one end of the spectrum. And then there's everything for everyone out here. And it's a really nice place to live. So I'm not even going to go into that too much. There is the Delray Marketplace out here as well, which is kind of serves the Western community for, you know, boutique type shopping and the movie theater and that kind of thing. And then just all these developments up here like Valencia. Oh, I did want to mention the Green Cay Nature Preserve. And there's this other preserve here called the Waxahachie wetlands. So there's a lot of nature out here. The developments are spread out. It's not overly crowded. And people that live out west here think about themselves as living in Delray, and this is easy access. So that's just an overview of Delray Beach. I highly recommend it. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments because I love to hear what your thoughts are. So thanks for watching. I hope you found this helpful. I'd love to hear your comments or questions in the comments section. And as always, feel free to text or call the number below and we can set up a Zoom call or just have a chat. And don't forget to like and subscribe so that you'll know every time we have a new video. Thanks for watching.